Thank you so much for joining us for part two. We really hope you enjoyed part one. So now Haleigh and I will continue our conversation about death work being political. Thanks for listening.
One, wisdom is earned by being faced with change and being faced with adversity. And number two, respect is earned.
Yes.
Respect is absolutely fucking earned. There's also like this weird attitude that, oh, if I suffered, so must you, among
I hate that.
elders. It drives me cuckoo bananas. I deal with chronic pain. I deal with chronic illness. I used to have a speech impediment. My stutter still comes out. And, elders are out here like, oh, you don't know anything about pain. I'm like, okay, this isn't the Pain Olympics, Dolores. Y'all can't understand two men holding hands, but you're going to tell me that I'm a snowflake for wanting equal rights?
Yeah.
Okay, already. Or like, there was a whole thing on Threads not too long ago about being queer in Appalachia. And the best response I saw was, being queer in Appalachia means being told I don't agree with your lifestyle from a dude with a Confederate flag cooler. Like,
Yeah.
Just pack it up. Pack it up.
It's one of those things where I've had actually a lot of run-ins with the older people lately that just like super pissed me off, because I'm like, well, I had one lady, she's like, well, when you get older, you'll understand like menopause and hot flashes. I'm like, ma'am, I have PCOS and I just got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I've been dealing with neuropathy and all these other pains. I have to take hormones because of my PCOS. I understand a damn hot flash. I understand everything sucking and you have insomnia and you're awake all night. I understand random hospital trips for stupid things and, all stuff they can't figure out, and they tell you,
I'm
we
on
don't know
SSRIs, ma'am. I know about some hot flashes.
Yeah. You've made an assumption based on the age you think I am, and you think that you have control or a knowledge of this, when I'm like, do you not understand that these things are not age related necessarily?
Yes.
Like, this is pain is not an age related thing. Hormone issues can be all over the place. It's not an age related thing. And you have to understand that by thinking you have this moral superiority just because of your age and not understanding where everybody is at pisses me off. And
the whole like you'll get more conservative when you get older thing. Like, if anything, I have become more of a leftist as I've aged. I was very mellow younger. Now I am a feral fucking forest witch. I could end up on the news at any moment. I will be there on CNN dishing it out. Like, one, never underestimate a Leo's ability to make a scene. Number two, I've only become more and more ferocious about my politics as I've aged. And I've become more and more in disbelief and in shock that other people aren't too. Like, what? Does age suddenly, like, your empathy evaporates? You are no longer capable of compassion? You're not able to see that other people matter too? Or are you just so stuck in your knee issues and your, AARP membership? Or are you worried about your Social Security that fucking much when they're already cutting it that, are you that worried about golf at 8 a.m. to worry about other people? Some of the people who may be cutting the grass for the course? Or
I don't understand how a lot of this generation that's older were like the hippies and stuff protesting Vietnam, and they've gotten weird to where I'm like, the only thing I've sat there with this for a little bit, and one of my theories, and I know this wouldn't apply to everyone, but I have felt that some of it is they're facing their own mortality and they suddenly become more religious because they think, oh, I wasn't like honoring God and stuff before, and I'm going to die soon, so now I have to be more strict and more
Pascal's
religious.
wager. Yep.
Yeah. And because like I loved my grandmother, she was my person. When she was younger, she was having like witchcraft stuff hosted at her house. There was a famous witch who cursed one of the World Series. That curse took place in my grandmother's living room. by the way. And I've been told that story a million times. And then as she got older, she married my step grandpa because my other grandfather had passed away, my actual grandfather, and he was more religious. And so like she wouldn't talk about being witchy, but she'd go buy crystals and she made her own tarot deck and she'd still do all these things. But then she's like anti-abortion and she's only voting on that issue, and she was a Republican and all these things. And I'm like, Grandma, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're doing all these things, and I think a lot of it is facing your own mortality. And especially since we're so afraid of death on this side of the world, in the more Western modern cultures, this is like one of the symptoms of it is they feel entitled. They feel all these things because they're like, well, I'm going to die soon and I need to just be in control. I need to do this, and I go to church and I get my forgiveness and I can be holier than thou and be a bitch the rest of the week. And then on Sunday, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And they don't feel like they have to be held accountable for anything that they do. And they feel entitled to your space. Like my across the street neighbor doesn't like that my partner sometimes parks his truck in front of my house on a street with no signage. There's no rules about it, nothing. So last weekend he parked in the spot my partner usually parks in, and it partially blocked my driveway. So my partner, being a passive aggressive person, like parked in front of him so close that he was like, we see what you're doing. And the guy moved his truck. And he's like this older gentleman. Like, he yelled at my niece for moving my dumpster back for me when she was here. He's like, why are you touching her dumpster? And I'm like, why would a kid mess with a dumpster? Be like,
mind your own business, Dan.
Yeah.
Like,
they have this psychological need to feel superior because they're older and they think they deserve these things. They have
and they think they're important.
Yeah. They think that they matter. Like my next door neighbors, they're super MAGA. They came over and cut down some of my plants without asking onto my property. It wasn't like a matter of something over the property line where they trimmed, because they're allowed to do that. That is the law. They actually cut down my hydrangeas all the way to the ground, and they did a hack job of it. And when I went to confront them, they had the nerve to say, like, my yard looks awful, which, by the way, it doesn't. And they were saying all these things, and they're anti-Semitic, and I'm half Jewish. And they also accused me of abusing my dog, which, if anyone knows me, my dog is the most spoiled animal on this planet. He has like 18 freaking dog beds in my house. He gets
I'd have ended up on the news.
Like, oh no, like I said some really not nice things to this man's wife because when she said my yard looked awful, I was like, ma'am, I'd rather my yard look awful than look like whatever you look like right now. And that's when he pushed her back and stepped out and shut the door, because I was like, we're about to fight. And that's when she was like, well, you abuse your dog. What are you talking about? My dog, like, I rescued him when he had heartworm and babied him through all his treatments. He sleeps next to me on my bed. Like, he gets all these treats, and my friends come over and play with him. He has a huge backyard to run in. And like, what on earth are you talking about?
Imagine making up shit. Like, yeah. Just, ugh.
When I told my partner this, he's like, wait, abuse this dog? As he's like curled up on him and like, licking his face and all this stuff. He's like,
is the abused dog in the room with us?
But it's this entitled old people stuff where they just, and I think a lot of it is the Christian lens of things, this mortality issue. And I think a lot of them grew up in the time where there was prosperity, like in the 80s and everything else. And our like the millennials and everyone after that is born after that era where everything started to fall apart. And they never really had to experience the same hardships that we have. So that's why we are staying this way, because we see it. We're going to inherit way less wealth than they will or have.
And to some degree, it's their fault.
Yeah. It's 100% their fault. Like they bought a house for $1 and a donut, and now it's worth $2 million. And so when they go to die, that's $2 million in somebody's pocket somewhere. I had to scrimp and save and whatever to get my house and go through a bunch of programs to help me pay for it and all these things. And I was very lucky to be able to do that. Most people can't. But they have this idea in their head that we are all lazy and we don't want to work. And I'm like, I work like 5 jobs. What do you want from me? What else do you want me to do? And I think that's where we get this disconnect between, again, the generation of hippies and people who protested and did some amazing things back then. And it's like, what happened to you all?
Like, it's pathetic what they've turned into.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's pathetic that they got so much done when they were young, and when they were more environmentally minded, and when they give shit about women and minorities and all this other shit, and got us out of a horrific war that we shouldn't have been in. And then they come home, and then a few decades later, they're doing the same shit that, like, the people they were protesting against are doing, and they're voting that way. Like, it's pathetic, and it's embarrassing. And I feel like there's so much that, not only death witchcraft, but just witchcraft in general, that brings more of that down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because the religious component is absolutely right. But if we pull back the religious curtain, it's all patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all capitalism. It's all government oversight and late stage capitalism and patriarchy and misogyny and racism and all of those things. And, the whole fucking thing about the way that the art industry and like the music industry and all of these creative industries are going, and it's all of those things wrapped up to hell in a handbasket because those folks got old and they converted, and now they are 2-bit chicken shit cowards, and they want to talk to us about us being entitled. Like, you absolute hypocritical fucks. Like, wow.
It's astonishing. And, of course, I know it's not everyone, but it's enough of them that it's honestly, it's so frustrating. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're trying to, these are the people who are about to pass soon. Yeah. And when you do death work, it's really hard to reconcile that sometimes, because it's like, you all are the ones closer to that than I am, at least as far as I know currently with the information I have. And you're the ones I would love to honor, but you're not honoring the rest of us. You're not honoring the earth. You're not honoring these things. Like, you're fine with your creature comforts and your patriarchy, and the racism component is a whole crazy other conversation, because it's always like, we're seeing, especially with the Voting Rights Act stuff right now, but people are finally seeing how much that's been pervasive. And, I made a video years ago about, people forget about Kentucky politically until it matters to them. Like with the Thomas Massey thing, they think he's this amazing person just because of the files. I'm like, no, he's actually like a horrible, horrible man. There was no good actually winning out of this. And they only cared about Kentucky when he lost that primary. And I was like, you all only care about red states when you can shit on us.
Yes.
You only care about these spaces when you can say, well, you voted for Mitch McConnell and stuff. I'm like, do you know how gerrymandered and, abused and stuff these states are? And that, I saw actually a post today. It says you can tell a lot about someone's liberalism with how they talk about red states.
Yes. Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to a lot of these states are older.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the young people leave, and you have these older generations going through exactly what we're talking about. And the young people that are there are trying and fighting and doing as much as they freaking can.
Barely keeping their heads above water financially while they do it.
Exactly. And then no money gets spent here. Like, the DNC does not spend money on Kentucky, like, at all. If you
they don't give a shit.
They do not, until again, they can use this as a little whipping boy for when we don't do what they hope we do.
Yeah.
And I'm what else do you want from us? We have no resources except, and we're like fighting this uphill battle, and you all sit in your blue state and judge us. And like, a lot of my family lives in blue states. I love going and visiting them and stuff, but I'm like, part of the reason I haven't left is because if all of us leave, we lose the foothold here.
Yeah.
We can't just all leave, if, financially too, we can't just all leave. And it's privilege to say, well, just move out. Well, it's expensive to move to a blue state. I don't have that money to like sell my house and try to move there and find housing and a job and everything else. Like, that's not feasible. And, like, why don't you help us maybe make the red states better so then we don't have a problem at all?
Yeah, so the only blue spots are not the cities.
Yeah.
Like, PA is a huge battleground state.
Yeah.
We have like 4 or 5 blue spots, period. It's like Pittsburgh, Philly, Erie, State College, Harrisburg. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all we fucking got. But if you only look at it that way, you miss beautiful, humanitarian states like Jim Thorpe, like New Hope, like Gettysburg, like, all of these different places. And then, Democrats only come to these states to, again, like you said, complain and bitch about us being uneducated, backwards hillbillies when we don't vote the way they want. And then they leave those of us who are tiny blue dots in huge red areas completely leave us to the wolves and only come here when they're trying to win a state instead of actually coming here to help so that we can actually turn our states blue. And they don't deal with the gerrymandering. They don't deal with the older generations who, by the way, you're absolutely right in them being closer to their mortality. The only difference is we're closer to death than arguably they are in terms of mentality. But the minute they face their own mortality, they let go of all their values, all of their beliefs, and there's chicken shit scared cowards who have to run to patriarchy and who have to run to the church to get any semblance of comfort. Like, and then they vote the way they do because, they think that the government is going to give them better Social Security in their last few years. No, they're going to cut it, gut you, raise your taxes, and leave you economically stranded in the process. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Like, it drives me up the wall and to the left. Like,
it is, yeah. This is why I believe in deconstructing from so many things, like patriarchy, like, I think I mentioned this to you that I'm writing a book on deconstructing from Christianity and, embracing, and it's not saying you can't be Christian. It's understanding that your viewpoint doesn't have to stay just in that lens, that you need to be able to look at other perspectives and other things and know that the patriarchy and all this stuff is a way of looking at it. And we need to be able to step back and recognize that maybe those rose-colored glasses are actually rose-colored glasses and the world looks completely different. And needing to be able to take that step back. Because I think that's why there are so many witches who are against Bane work and death work, because they haven't removed that lens, because it is the majority lens of many places. Yeah. And I've mentioned, people think Hades is the devil because he's underground and there's a Disney movie about it. They don't understand that that is actually not the case, that there was not really a devil by any means. And that it's a completely different viewpoint on death. And I've had so many other witches will say like, well, you're worshiping evil. And I'm like, where are you getting this from? And it's because they have been taught by the larger society to make that weird comparison between the devil and the underworld. Yeah. And it pisses me off to no end, because it's like, can you not take a step back and look historically that the hell didn't actually exist when the Greeks were doing any of this? So that doesn't make any sense.
I did a lot of academic research in the archives when I worked at the university, and one of the things I presented on at a couple of conferences was the fact that, if we look at even Middle Age, in the Middle Ages and in the medieval period, depictions of the Christian hell would be called Hades and the underworld. And if we look at Christianized transcriptions of, for example, like Ovid's Metamorphoses, all of these different things, and these Roman retellings of Greek myths, they immediately Christianize the underworld, which is a watery underworld. 5 rivers. Like, it is waterlogged. There is no fire, there is no brimstone, unless you're talking about Tartaros, and that's only if you're going down the river Phlegethon, which is the river of fire. Like, I talked about the way that when the Christians got hold of Greek mythology, they immediately made everything look Christian, including making the underworld into a fiery hellspit that doesn't make sense for what we understand about Greek mythology, about the realm of Hades. And then they made Hades the god into Lucifer the devil when they don't have even remotely similar aspects whatsoever.
No.
Like, and it's such a disservice because he's arguably one of the most level-headed gods in the Hellenic pantheon. Like, Hades Eubulos of good counsel. Like, the only time he really picked up a sword in Greek mythology is during the Titanomachy when Pylos, which also, if we look at the archaeological record, had a shrine to Hades. So he was only really protecting his personal worshippers, and not only that, he was wounded in battle. So, like, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
It's so frustrating because this is one of the weird times as a child that I like defended Hades in front of a bunch of people. There's a place called French Lick, Indiana, and there's a hotel there. And this is before they've remodeled it. It looks entirely different now, but it was a hotel that was famous for sulfur springs, and they called it Pluto Water. So they called it Pluto Water, and it was it looked like the hotel from The Shining. It was from the same era. It's actually super haunted. There was a lot of like scary deaths and stuff there, like, and like fires and whatever. But I remember as a kid, we spent my 16th birthday there, and it had, again, super haunted, had a creepy vibe. We were running downstairs to go to the indoor pool, and my friends and I were running. We turned this corner, and we get stopped by this gold statue. My friends kind of, like they screamed a little bit, and it looked like Pan, right? The little horns, little bearded guy, and he had the cloven feet, like what we would know as Pan.
Right.
And I was like, what the? But he had no eyes. They were just empty holes. And I was like, what in the heck is this? And I was looking, there's no sign. And a worker comes by and he's like, oh, that's Pluto. That's our statue of Pluto. And I apparently went the fuck off. Like, my friends are like, you got mad. And you were like, that is not him. He wears black armor. He, supposedly handsome. I was like, this is Pan. This is like what they try to make the devil look like. Like, I apparently went the fuck off. Like, I think I blacked out a little bit because I don't remember that, but I have like all my friends are like, you got so mad. And I said,
as you should,
because he's not the devil. And that's why I can't watch the Disney movie, even though I love the muses. They're the only part that I actually enjoy of that movie, because I'm like, painting Zeus as this awesome family man, and then Hades is this devil who wants to release the Titans, even though he helped trap them down there in the first place. And he, like, what? I just can't do it. Like, it pisses me off. And like every time, this is why I can't like Percy Jackson, because they make him kind of evil.
Yeah.
Like, all of these representations of Hades has been, he's this evil monster and he wants to take over. And they always cast a very spindly looking person,
like an
or
old
something.
Dude, like some old man.
like it's just, it frustrates the hell out of me. I'm like, this is not. Yeah, I think that's why I liked Lore Olympus so much, because I'm like, at least they, she tried to make him look like he was and like give him a personality, like that he's not this evil overlord, and he's more neurodivergent coded than pretty much of any of the other gods, honestly, if we want to get into that, except maybe Hermes with ADHD. But it's just upsetting, this vilification of these deities because of that Christian lens, and that we have to apply the Christian lens, even if you're not Christian, to how you view these stories. A friend of mine, we've talked so much about this topic of like deconstructing, because like so many people look at our myths like they look at the Bible as the word of God. And I'm like, that's not what the myths are. And also the Bible is actually not that, but that's another conversation.
Thank the gods that the Bible is not that.
It is not that. And I'm like, if you're viewing the mythology as the truth, like this is what happened, you're viewing the mythology wrong. Like, these are lessons, and to understand it, not to say the gods are perfect, because they're not, but we have to look at things a different way. And it's such a passion project of mine to talk about and like deal with that, because when you finally decenter patriarchy and white supremacy, and
that's where you find true freedom.
Yeah, like you realize a lot about yourself and where you need to go. And I think that's when people become more activists, when they really see the privilege and stuff that's been there from these majority things and what those things have done.
Yeah. And I'm I'm so eager for your book to come out. Best believe I'm going to be the first person to pre-order that fucking thing, because I came to paganism not from a super religious background. I was raised very secular, but
Mm-hmm.
I had a very spiritually active childhood. I was very much wanting to believe and was very repressed. And I came to paganism through hardcore atheism. I was a very Hitchensian atheist. And
Okay.
and then I had like a little mentee bee, and I decided like, oh, atheism isn't helping. Let me see if I can lean into this and see if it's going to help me dealing with the fact way too young as my friends were dying around me to be like, maybe I can have a healthier relationship with death than this. And then as I entered my witchcraft, I too had religious trauma. Like,
Yeah.
even while I was completely disconnected from religion and from Christianity, or, my mom's side of the family is very Irish American in the sense that, like, half of them are Protestant, half of them are Catholic. It's kind of religiously ambiguous over there, but like still very, very religious. But even folks who come to witchcraft through atheism, like being agnostic, anything else, there's still religious trauma. Like, I was worried that, because I was deep in my academic studies when I did that, and like there was definitely a stigma around being religious and equating it to being stupid. And I didn't want growing up with a speech impediment, stupid was the last thing I wanted to be seen as. So I had religious trauma in that way, but I also had a lot of patriarchal messaging. I had a lot of internalized homophobia, like back then, being like very deeply a lesbian before I discovered fruity men in my 20s and became a bisexual, which is not the typical path of a bisexual. Like, typically they are straight women who discover other women. I was a lesbian who discovered fruity men, and
I love that.
Right, yeah. Happy Pride. So I didn't have the very, Catholic to witch pipeline, but I had a very much a deconstructing from being male-centered and deconstructing from what little patriarchy was still present in my life. And and I have yet to find a more empowering path for any woman in the modern sphere than that. Other than maybe being a death witch, and maybe working with dark goddesses and chthonic goddesses. I mean, particularly my path with Persephone and Morrigan, because those two, Persephone is so many things all at once, and she gives us permission to be so many things all at once. And the Morrigan is such a goddess of transition and a goddess of change, but she is the goddess of righteous anger, and she is the goddess of justified work. And she's called the red-mouthed Bive, and she sits at the shoulders of male heroes who don't listen to her as they die. And I've yet to find anything more empowering than being able to, in a man's final moments, tell him why he was wrong. It's truly so aspirational, but there's something so healing about dark goddess worship in that way, and there's something so empowering about death work in general. I mean, taking it all the way back to necrobotany, I mean, if we think about the way that gardens work, so much death is so present in the act and meditative practice of gardening, and being able to grow plants that have both healing and baneful qualities. There's a very prominent saying in folk magic that blessing and bane grow on one stalk. And there's so much about Appalachia that is both life affirming in terms of its just radical, wild beauty. And then there's also a lot of macabre, grotesque death that's just around every corner. And you're constantly reminded of the fact that you walk among spirits and you walk among mountains that are older than Saturn's rings and all the rest of it. But also when you walk with dark goddesses, you are never walking alone. And that's the one thing that patriarchy really benefits from, is women thinking that they're alone. And number two, when you work with dark goddesses, you are not given the wiggle room of shrinking. You are not allowed to shrink, especially to service some man. Like, you are put through your paces in terms of radical self-growth and self-healing, but also you are given the tools, if you do not already possess them, to liberate yourself and to help liberate others and to discover your personal sovereignty and to help others find theirs. You are put into this community of radical women and queer folks in particular, because, you know, I defy you to tell me that Hecate isn't queer. Like, she's,
half the Greek gods are either bi, pan, lesbian. I mean, there's very few that I would consider like wholly straight.
Yeah.
You know, very, very few. And yeah.
Like, the fact that Priapus exists, like, but I like, there's so much about working with the chthonic that allows us to come to terms with our own darknesses, to find the lessons in the library of our own experiences. I mean, I think of the Nine of Wands, like, going into that deep library of all of the things that have happened to us and to pull out the lesson and the ability to take in negative stimuli and respond rather than react, and the ability to stand in our sovereignty and to say, this far, no further. I am the expert of my own experience. You will not gaslight me into thinking that I didn't see something that I saw, that I didn't hear something that I heard. And you're not going to tell me that I don't have worth and I don't have value, because I know inherently that I do, because I would not be alive still, and I would not have survived all that I have if I didn't have something inherent that enabled me that strength. So I'll talk to my experience with Hecate, because she gave me a strange kind of permission that I didn't realize I kind of needed, to show up as a queer woman, and to show up as a child-free queer woman who was in the care of, who was positioned to be of service to children as a teacher. And who, I mean, Hecate is a child-free woman who is a protectress of newborns and a protectress of young children and women and mothers, while not really, I mean, there are spiritual daughters of hers like Circe and Medea, and like these figures in mythology in general, and folks who, you know, I feel like anybody who calls himself a witch kind of becomes a spiritual daughter of Hecate or whoever. But with Hecate in particular, she gave me such a permission to be a queer woman in service that I don't know if I could have received from any other goddess, save maybe the other ones I worked with. But like, she gave me such a permission to be liminal, and a permission to be at transition, and a permission to be so many things other than what the societal messaging was telling me I should be. Which has greatly helped me in my work as a occult professor and a witchcraft teacher and a diviner and all these other things. But it's also helped me in the sense of making sure that wherever I walk with the values and the beliefs that have enabled me to be of service to others, and keep my queer ancestors and my ancestors of affinity and vocation top of mind. Folks like Eartha Kitt, folks like Kevin Conroy, Adrian Rich, Marsha P. Johnson, Pamela Coleman Smith, all of these different people who are important. someone who, you know, if you're Irish American and you're looking for an anti-fascist goddess to put on your ancestor altar, look at Violet Gibson. She was a would-be assassin of Mussolini. He turned his head and she tipped off the end of his nose. And I think it was, if you look at pictures of him after that, she was an Irish woman who would have assassinated Mussolini had he not turned his head. And her name will always be among my exalted ancestors because she, you know, the best of the Irish people are always the anti-fascists, the ones who stand for liberation, the ones who stand with Palestine and stand with Jewish diaspora, and the ones who stand with native peoples and Lebanon and all these different places, and hate the British and in the like. Those are the things that I feel like bring Irish solidarity to the forefront focus. But like, there are ancestors that I would have only discovered had I done that work, had I done that deconditioning and that decolonization and that deconstruction.
Yeah, it's a very important work to do. And I think people forget that even if you're aware, you still grew up in that society. We all have internal bias. We all have things that we have been taught. And if we don't face them and understand them, we're not really being true to ourselves and our fellow humans. You know, we're not being good stewards of the earth and good stewards of each other. And, you know, I always say like ancestors are a complicated thing because we all have good and we all have bad. There's no one who has a perfect ancestry. That's impossible. Like just impossible. And being able to heal the negative and honor the good is such a blessing. And I know not every witch feels called to do that.
Yeah.
Which is valid. You know, everyone's practice is valid. But, you know, having that conversation of that, especially when we're talking about death work, I think is so important because death work oftentimes goes hand in hand with the ancestors and like where we come from. And part of that decolonization and the deconstructing and everything is being able to look at what they contributed to and what they were a part of and recognize like, okay, I understood why, you know, my great great grandmother had a bajillion children and like why she had to put up with it and everything else. But I don't have to do that.
Right.
And I can heal this for her. You know, like I can be, you know, a queer person. I can be a witch. I can be all the things that maybe she wanted to be and felt like she couldn't because of fear, because of all these other things. And that's my way of honoring it, even if she wouldn't recognize it if she were still alive.
Right.
You know, and I love looking at, you know, it's funny you bring up Mussolini because like my mom's best friend growing up, her parents actually came from Italy because of the war. And if you mention Mussolini, like they'd spit, you know, like the whole, the very Italian response to bullshit, you know.
My partner's Italian and fiercely anti-fascist, so I feel that.
Yeah, I had to like resist doing the spit thing when you said Mussolini's name because like when you're, you know, like that's a socialization thing where you're like
I hear you.
Sure. It's but it's just, you know, and a lot of people forget those stories. You know, they forget the women who would lure the Nazis into the forest and unalive them and, you know, do all these amazing things. And, you know, they forget the resistances and they forget all the stories get lost. And it wasn't even that long ago. It's just, you know, history. I hate that stupid thing where like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Like, no, history repeats itself. You guys.
We're seeing it all the time, honey. Like
it's repeating, and that's why it's so important to talk about these stories and remember these stories. And death work is a big piece of that because it carries the memories. You know, it carries a lot of the memories, and it carries the empowerment to be able to talk about the memories, to talk about these women and people of color and stuff who did amazing work. You know, like you bring up Marsha Johnson and. This is Pride, and Pride was a riot. You know, the first Pride was a riot. And, you know, a lot of people don't know that. Unfortunately, even many queer people that I meet, especially the younger generation, don't know that. Again, that wasn't that long ago. There are plenty of people who are still alive, who were alive during that time. And we forget our history all too quickly, and part of that death work is the memories and
I
working with that.
I feel like I was doing death work long before I started doing witchcraft, because I have my first 2 degrees are in history, and I spent a long time doing history of American espionage during the American Revolution. And people forget about Agent 355, who without whom we probably wouldn't have won. We forget about, I mean, and if we think about like whose stories get told, the spies never do. The only people who tell those stories are other spies, because they're the only ones who know about them. It's the same with, and again, not that long ago. I mean, the anniversary of D-Day is tomorrow, and there's so much about even World War II, which is probably one of the, other than like the Roman Empire and maybe a couple of other things, one of the most researched historical events of like ever, and we're still finding out shit about that war, and we're still finding out the atrocities that never see an end, and there are aspects of that conflict that are still reverberating today, not least of which everything that's happened after October 7th and the current ongoing war in Palestine, and it's such a, and I feel like when you learn history, especially military history, like I was, I feel like you learn the depths to which the human psyche can go, and you can learn all of the ways in which humans can absolutely eviscerate one another. And the entire industries dedicated to finding new ways to murder one another. And I think about not just the Nazis, but the Japanese as well.
God.
Oh my God, Section 731 and the Comfort Women and Nanking and all of these different things. It's horrific. And
people don't know about that either.
Oh my God. It's the kind of shit that like validates my trust issues and validates my, participating in my Second Amendment rights. I never really slept that well until I started, sleeping next to a man who knew how to use a gun, and then I got my own gun, and then it's one of those things where you learn the depravity to which humanity can sink. I mean, I think the Files were probably the most recent eye-opening event to that effect in recent history. I think, there's the Files, the Essay Academy, the war on Palestine, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, all of these different, the Congo, Sudan, Lebanon.
People keep forgetting about Africa a lot, which
oh my gosh,
because they just don't care. It's this level of apathy that if it doesn't affect you personally, like people don't care, and or the new flavor of the month to care about shows up. The new thing to, be a social justice warrior and just go after people online, but don't actually do any activism because
we hear about the Met Gala for 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. Or they go to one protest and think they've done an amazing thing, and then they go have a beer, and then they don't do any of the after stuff. And, like, protests are valid, but if you're not doing the work along with the protest, you basically just went to party. Like, it's not the same thing. And that's where I get so frustrated, because people are like, why aren't you doing more? I'm like, I am doing stuff. I don't need to talk about it because you all aren't ready for the conversation of what you're doing is actually not anything.
Yeah. And then there are folks who are chronically ill and disabled who can't afford to, protest, or people who can't leave work and get time off to go protest. And then those people either are like me, who do justified work, who do, you know, participate in group rituals with Witches for Palestine and all of these different things. And, you know, they're treated like they didn't do anything, but they're actually doing things. They're just not broadcasting it. And then there are people who donate, who are in a position to donate, who do produce swaps, who participate in farmers markets, who, you know, are like Beck Lawrence over in Hanover, PA, who's doing constant community work while dealing with an active lawsuit to protect their religious rights, and all of these different things. And then there are people who attend one protest and think they're doing enough. No.
That's just the gateway. That's the place to go network and meet the people who are doing stuff and ask them, what can I do next? What is my next step? Because it's always a next step. You know, like the civil rights, they weren't just marching. They were marching and meeting. They were doing boycotts. They were doing this. They were doing that. They had a unified
and
they
getting
took
attacked by
turns
hoses
doing
and dogs and all of these different things. And they had greater risk to their life. Because they weren't just fighting the government. And, you know, I feel like saying that in, you know, within 6 months of ICE gunning down a number of people in the streets is a little callous, but like, those people are fighting ICE, but they don't have systemic racism to back up and have the people who are murdering them feel justified in doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand this world today. And I don't mean in the sense that everyone's too sensitive. I mean that in the sense that everyone's too apathetic.
It is a deep apathy that bothers me. And now, you know, they keep like a bunch of the Christian nationalists are calling empathy a sin. You know, Elon Musk said that, where empathy is a sin and women are the worst of it. That's something I've seen too, to where I'm like, and that's why women shouldn't be able to vote, because we're voting with our empathy. And that, like, it's
Christ-like of you, Elon Musk. Very Christ-like.
Very big dog whistle of crap, you know. Like, it's just And the more you get into it, the more I'm like, this is why I see so many more women looking for things like witchcraft, or at least moving away from other patriarchal stuff, because they're sick of this happening. They're seeing like this constantly happening. And I see more and more people asking, like, they'll ask me about it. You know, they'll be like, so how did you get into it? And I was like, well, you know, I got sick of being scared in Christianity all the time and being afraid of like demons and stuff coming after me. And now I understand like where the whole origin of demons came from. And like, yeah, there are not good entities out there. Absolutely. But you don't have to be afraid of this crazy, like, hierarchical system of demons who are like trying to possess you. They don't care. They do not care about taking. Why would a demon with unlimited abilities care about being in your human body?
They don't care about your crusty, dusty soul.
They do not care. Selling your soul is not even a thing, because you're going to end up probably reincarnating anyway. What would they do with the 10 minutes they had it?
Like, it's like going up to a billionaire and being like, hey, I'll sell you this coupon. I'll give you this coupon for, you know, a Hostess cupcake. I'll give you this coupon. You want the coupon? And then having this entire system of belief around billionaires wanting your coupon. They don't. Yeah. They don't care. There is nothing outside of Christianity that wants your crusty, dusty, musty soul. And like, and think of the microplastics. And like they don't want it, dude.
They don't want my hip issues. They don't want to be like hobbling trying to go after people, you know.
They don't want my autoimmune issues. They don't want none of that.
Well, and it's like, you know, and when we talk about Christianity, it's not even Jesus, because Jesus is cool. Like, what
Brown Jesus? Brown Jesus I got no problem with.
Like, he and I can vibe out. I would love to sit down and have a conversation with him. But it's the organized religion part of it that is what pisses me off. And the people who don't actually follow what he said. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have Christian friends who are following what he said, and they stand up for rights, and they, you know, they're pro-trans rights and all these things. And I'm like, that's why I can be friends with you, because you're living like he talked about, not this other crazy bullshit that's trying to control and all this stuff, you know, like that's you know, I have Muslim friends that are amazing, and like what they talk about, and like loving people and being open and things like
Zohran
that.
Mamdani in New
Yeah.
York, dude. Like,
Well, it's like people don't talk about the bombing at the Pittsburgh Temple, the Tree of Life
yeah,
Temple, where it was the Muslims who came and helped clean up and bury
yes,
the.
yeah,
People don't want to talk about that because we
no,
got to have Islamophobia and anti-Semitism at the same time, because
doesn't
we got
work
to
with their
hate on everybody.
narrative,
Yeah, they have to feel superior
right?
and use things as scapegoats, because I as a Jewish person, I get so tired of like
Yeah,
the right using us to justify their actions and their weird freaking revelation fetish of
yes,
bringing about the end of the world stuff. Like
yeah,
I don't want no part of that. And then I hate when there are people who go so far to that liberal side that they're anti-Semitic, and they don't understand that most of us do not want anything going on in Palestine, because we're like, this is not okay, and this
yeah,
is what we do not stand for. And I believe Netanyahu is the same as Trump and all those other people, and they're all old
yep,
white men just wanting to control things.
and
And
visit
then
islands.
everybody wants to hate on Jews, saying like it's your fault. And I have been kicked out of spaces before they've even asked what my opinion is, just because of the simple fact that I'm a Jewish woman. And I'm like, you didn't even ask anything about me. You were just already judging me because you think you
Yep,
know who I am.
yep,
And, you know, I've seen some pretty horrible things said to where I'm like, you do know that we don't want this either.
right.
And that things have been taken from us. And like, you don't understand our diaspora situation. And like, you know, there are people being attacked for being Muslim or Jewish or whatever, just by like being outside. You know, like there's stabbings all the times, and shootings, and threatening mosques and temples and all this, because
Horrid shit.
it's just it's a constant thing where I'm like, I feel safer being around, you know, Muslim people than I do Christian people half the time.
Yep,
And because the overwhelming majority of them are not the zealot people, like, you know, the terrorist groups and stuff. That's an outlier. That's not their norm. And you know, it's upsetting to see how broken everything is based on religion, because somebody needs to feel superior and hate on everybody else, when really we're all just trying to exist. We're all just trying to have a happy life with our families, and maybe have some decent health care, and maybe be able to eat some decent food and have
yes,
clean water, and not be bombarded with stupid crap like starting a war in Iran for no damn reason.
and not have our
And
schools shot up, and not have our education be completely run by religion and all this other shit.
yeah, we're just trying to exist as people.
Exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
fucking right. The shit that gets me is particularly with education, because that's my sphere. It's the folks who are Republican, who believe in a white Jesus, uh who just can't get it together when it comes to gun control. Like, and then I had this whole argument with a former friend of mine last year, where she was a kindergarten teacher for many, many years in Georgia. And then she came up to Pennsylvania, and we ended up working together. And when what happened to Charlie Kirk happened to Charlie Kirk, she was singing his praises all over her Facebook. Now, mind you, she knew I was pagan. She knew I was queer. And Charlie Kirk is a ferocious anti-pagan, was a ferocious anti-pagan. And I'm like, so you were just playing lip service to my face for like a year while condemning me in private? Like, you do realize that Charlie Kirk wrote a foreword to The Pagan Threat in America, saying that a nature loving, like, spirituality who just wants to protect the marginalized and have empathy for the vulnerable is evil and somehow threatening Christianity in America, you're gonna tell me that the guy who's like, oh, school shootings, absolutely a price to pay for the Second Amendment. You're telling me that as a school teacher, talking to another school teacher, that's okay? Like, shame on you, fuck you, and the horse you rode in on. And oh my gosh, like, that's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Well, you know, he and Candace, whatever her name is, they believed they had psychic abilities, by the way.
Yeah.
That Jesus gave them. And the moment I heard that, I had to sit there for a second, and I was like, you know, that's enough internet for today. I just, I want to go ground and be done with it, because it's this disgusting rhetoric of hate and making everyone hate and all this stuff, when it's like, again, is my practice doing anything to hurt you? Unless you're a pedophile, probably not.
Hey, that part.
Unless you're a fascist, probably not doing anything to you. I don't have the time or the energy. I'm chronically ill. I can't go be cursing you just because.
Yep.
Right. That takes some energy. That takes some time. I like, you praying to your God doesn't affect me. I don't care.
Like, let's call it for what it is. It's a weird chosen one rhetoric too. And when it comes into the witchcraft space, it comes in the form of like star seeds and, chosen ones, and oh, I was chosen, I'm untouchable, you can't throw anything at me and have it hit me, I'm unstoppable. But the Christians also do this too, because they think, oh, God chose me, I'm, he speaks through me. And then I have to argue with these fucking people on street corners when they try to sell me pamphlets. And oh God, it gets me so bad. Like, it's hysterical, and it's embarrassing, and it's antithetical to the First Amendment, freedom of religion. Like, Pennsylvanians didn't fight to put that in there for you guys. Like, my culture is not your costume. But like,
yeah,
it's so hysterically pathetic. And this is like, when I was doing my interfaith talks, as you graciously introduced at the beginning of this episode, like, when I was doing my interfaith talks, a lot of the pushback was, there's nobody out here believing in paganism save you. And then the pagan groups came out and attended my talk, and like, I received threats. I received, if I dared to bring paganism, and I had to talk about like the misconceptions that we're all baby eaters. I'm like, many of us are vegetarian. That doesn't fly to start with. Like, not only that, very few of us want children, so why would we eat yours? Like you're not thinking through. Again, this is, failure of education to critically think these things through. But there's also so much about like, and the whole bit about devil worship. Like, there is a devil in the craft. There is one. He's the folkloric devil. Is he the Lucifer of the Bible? No. Like, unless you're specifically working with him. But by and large, it's the folkloric devil. And he can be more accurately syncretized to like Kernonos and the Green Man, and like Pan and things like that. Like, he's a being of crossroads, he's a being of liminality, he's a being of knowledge, he's a being of,
he's like a trickster in a lot of ways. Like, very much like a Loki-esque type person.
Oh, absolutely. He's an initiatory figure. Like, it's nothing like it's portrayed. And I feel like that's partially their propaganda machine to demonize us since the 50s. And I think part of it is a leftover from the satanic panic of the 80s. But it's also just the fact that many of us have sort of filed down our fangs and declawed ourselves to be respectable to people who aren't respectful or respectable. Like, we're sucking up to people who aren't worth our time or our effort. And sure, the reason we're doing it is to survive, and the reason we're doing it is to protect our First Amendment rights. But like, we're getting taxed and they aren't.
Yeah.
like, we're doing more in terms of charity and we're doing more in terms of community than they ever did. Like, mm-hmm. they're the ones who are going to tear down historic buildings and put up more churches, as if we need that.
That's like the Satanic Temple. Like, they're literally a charity group, but they've been able to register as a religion, and they do more for charity than a lot of churches do.
Most charitable organization I've ever personally corresponded with.
They're fantastic. They do all sorts of like food things and housing things.
They'll escort people to like clinics and things if they need to receive reproductive care.
Clinics. Yeah, like they actually go to court to fight for rights. Like, they use the money you donate for the things they actually say they're going to do. It doesn't go into some random dude's pocket, or like, you know, there was a lady on, I forget, I think she was on Threads. She called multiple types of churches and pretended she needed like diapers for her baby. And pretty much every Christian church was like cruel to her about it. It's like, just go get a job at McDonald's or something.
Yep.
And I think it was the Muslim mosque that she called was the one who actually like wanted to help. And I was like, you know, that tells me all I need to know about. This is why I don't believe churches should automatically be tax free. I think they need to prove way more of where their money's going. Unfortunately, there's not as much oversight as there are with like other 503Cs, you know, where you have to submit stuff. Because how many of these mega churches are actually doing anything with their money other than proselytizing and paying off people?
There was a church that my partner and I visited very early on. I think like we had gone to this sort of very small town in order to antique shop, because Pennsylvania is brilliant for antique shopping if you've never been. So we decided to go for coffee because it is my hallelujah, heroin, and reason to breathe caffeine. So we were looking for the coffee shop, and the only one that we could find nearby was kind of this hole in the wall. And then we go in, and it's a coffee shop installed into a megachurch. And then we got our coffee, and I think he got a kick out of bringing like a pig into a church. So there was that. And then we start walking around, and they've got like smoke machines and this whole auditorium. And I'm like, oh man, where's that in the Bible? Where's real Christ-like to come in here with your full light show and put on a sermon and tell me I'm gonna go to hell for being bisexual? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Like, tax them all. Tax the Amish while you're at it. Like, tax all of them.
No one wants to talk about how bad the Amish are, but that's a whole...
Oh my God.
It'd go on for another hour, unfortunately.
I'll black out and crash out. Like...
Yeah, it's... Because we have a lot of Amish in Indiana. Like, I work in southern Indiana, and some of my clients, like, live near Amish farms and stuff, you know, and, like, so there is a decent population here. And
tons out here too.
You're in like the heart of it, and it's just one of those things where I think faith can be a beautiful thing. I think spirituality can be a beautiful thing. The religion is where it gets rocky.
Yes.
Because there's always a human in charge of it, and humans are so fallible and oftentimes greedy, oftentimes get corrupted, and that's where the problem lies. Like, again, Jesus is cool as hell. I have no problem if you follow Jesus. I have every problem when you're forcing it on people and you're doing these other things and you're not respecting me for where I am, especially as someone with religious trauma. And, you know, I went to Catholic school, for goodness sake, you know, like I was in it and like saw so many things. And unfortunately, I had friends who were molested by priests and all that stuff. And you get into it and you're like, I can't be a part of that. This is why I love working with these deities, because I don't have these other humans trying to tell me exactly what to do. I'm going directly to the deities, and I'm talking to other witches to get their opinion, but they aren't in control of me.
Right.
I can still have my agency and make my own decisions.
Why I have so much more respect for folk Catholics. Like,
oh yeah,
Catholics who are completely yeah, they were baptized, and yeah, they probably went to a Catholic school or Catholic elementary school or Sunday school. If they're out of church, I have so much more respect, because not only that they're so much more open to folk magics in general, but they also have that independence. They don't require participation in organized religion to have that personal relationship with the God of their choice. And they typically are very generous and they're very charitable. And I so much more respect for folk Catholics. And, it's one of those things, like, again, like what you said, when humans get their fingers in power and when they have their fingers in unlimited greed that isn't beholden to anybody else, it gets to a point where it's just irreconcilable with being a civilized human.
Yeah.
It gets to a point where it's exploitative and it becomes abhorrent and depraved so fast. I mean, this is particularly with such high control environments like the Amish and some of these mega churches and like the Westboro Baptist Church and FLDS and all these different things. Border, like, if not outright cults, like cult-like structures and high control environments. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
My other podcast is about cults, so I could get into that for like ever and ever. But it's amazing how much people want to control and how much people, the followers, they just want to feel like they belong and they have family and they want to feel secure because this world feels largely unsafe. And for them, it's the one safe place they have. And they don't have to make a lot of decisions while they're there. They can just, all right, you're telling me I need to be this way? Fine, I'll be this way. If you're giving me the umbrella of your protection and your safety, and I can feel like I have something stable under my feet, then I'll take it. I will make the decision to do that and whatever comes with that. And I understand that because the world is largely unsafe in so many ways. But I think people just, there's so many things that are systemic that it's hard to fight against it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it's like you have to be prepared for the fact that it is not an easy fight.
It's likely that it won't be decided in our lifetimes.
Right.
Which is why death work is important.
Yeah. I think that's a great place for us to stop because we are at 2.5 hours because I knew we would end up talking a lot. I was like, I'm going to have to have you back on for a part 2 because I think we could go on
I'm
for
down,
like another
dude.
2.5 hours. But
time and place.
I would love to have you back. I think we could easily, I'm going to plan some panels and things too, and, have the further conversations, especially, I think a lot of our guests are in the same belief place for us. So, but I have appreciated this conversation so much and that you are our first guest. And this has been, I think, a wonderful talk about so many pieces of things that all kind of boil down.
Yes.
To a few things, a few main things. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Time and place. Anytime you want to have anytime you want to chat and just shoot the breeze, I'm down.
I love it.
This is the stuff that I live for. I love talking about this shit because it's so important and it's so vital and it's so, like you said, it boils down to 2 or 3 things that we're really passionate about. And it just happens to also include witchcraft and all this other shit. Yeah. But time and place.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, again, this has been Haleigh, otherwise known as the Witch of Hemlock, and I will be linking all of her different stuff in the description box so you can follow her. You can look into her different courseworks and upcoming death coursework, which I'm really excited to learn more about. If anyone has any questions, if you're interested in being a guest or anything like that, please feel free to contact us on any of the socials. The link tree will be in the description box as well for this particular podcast. One thing you will see is we have a merch store, and the merch, a big portion goes to charity. That's the thing that I really wanted to do. 25% will go to first if you buy the Pride line, it goes to the Trevor Project, and then the main line will be a rotating charity. So keep an eye out every quarter. I will switch it up. Right now the charity is focused on helping people who need some dignity in death with regards to paying for like different funeral expenses and things like that. So that is linked there. And I invite anyone who wants to be a guest, including yourself, Haleigh, if there's something you would like designed on merch, to put that on there, and we can make sure that the charity donations get to where it needs to go. But for those who are like, well, what happens to the rest of the proceeds? Well, it's to pay for the podcast and some other projects that I have in mind that will go towards giving back to the community. But we wanted to initially get the charity part going. So if there's anything you feel like you want designed or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. It is a site that drop ships directly to you. It is not something where there is an inventory, so you don't have to wait on those sorts of things. And I wanted to go with something pretty easy. Again, if you see something you like but you want a different color, send me a message and I can quickly pop that in there and do whatever. I just kind of put some basic stuff. There's stickers, cups, things like that, because I love my stickers. I'm a sticker person. So.
Me too.
Yeah, a couple hoodies, things like that. But if anyone has anything they want to see or it feels important, or if you have any charities you would like to suggest, please feel free to reach out with those. I'm a big fan of, especially if it's smaller charities who don't usually get as much traction, please let me know about them. I would love to be able to make sure they get some of that proceeds. So there is a link for that as well. But otherwise, thanks everybody for listening, and I hope you come back to us with our next episode, and we'll just kind of go from there. All right. Thanks, everyone.